Hello, my friends, and thank you very much for your support of the Warren Legacy Foundation for Paranormal Research, which carries on the work of my grandparents, Ed and Lorraine Warren. Over the next several weeks, if not months, I will be reading The Demonologist by Gerald Brittle with the cooperation of my grandparents. And after each chapter, we will discuss it and talk about the things that I have learned and how perhaps the book isn't exactly correct. Let's begin. The Demonologist, The Extraordinary Career of Ed and Lorraine Warren by Gerald Brittle. This book was written in conjunction with my grandparents, Ed and Lorraine Warren. Academy Award nominated actress Vera Farmiga on how she prepared for the role of Lorraine Warren in the blockbuster film The Conjuring. Primarily, my research relied heavily on the nonfiction book The Demonologist. Despite its popularity, I found the book was hard to acquire. It's unlike any book I have ever read. It's a book about mystical theology. In it, one learns just how and why mystical phenomena occur. It scared the daylights out of me, profoundly. The preface insists that it is not dangerous to read and that knowledge is power. Whatever. I felt a sense of terror every time I cracked it open. I never read the book in the sanctity of my home. I can only read it in flight, funnily enough. Somehow, I felt safeguarded in an airplane. Vera Farmiga. The author's preface. It's not possible to prepare the reader in a few short paragraphs for what follows on the pages of this book. For what is contained here is material that goes beyond ghost stories, beyond the vagaries of so-called poltergeist phenomena, into a dimension further back, a dimension of terror and evil that is not only real, its workings are literally beyond imagination. What can be said, however, is that all the information presented in this book is true. These are real cases that happen to real people, and with only a few minor exceptions, all the incidents took place during the middle or late 1970s. Great care has been taken, furthermore, to include only those cases in the Warrens' files that were witnessed by ordained clergymen and exorcists, or in certain lesser circumstances, where the principals were credible and reliable, and their comments are plainly recorded on tape. It should also be stressed that there is no exaggeration or hyperbole in the presentation of the phenomena in this book. If anything, space simply does not allow for the inclusion of the overwhelming detail that goes to make up any one particular case. Yet ultimately, it's not the case studies, the mind-reeling phenomena, or even the transcripts of spirit voices that is of primary concern here. Other cases could have been used. Other, more horrific phenomena could have been brought forth. Instead, what causes one's spirit to tremble is the significance of what Ed and Lorraine Warren have to say. And there are no more credible spokespersons on the subject of spirits and supernatural phenomena. The Warrens have selflessly dedicated their whole lives to the study, teaching, and investigation of spirit forces. Their experiences have been proven and documented by priests, rabbis, doctors, mediums, police, and recognized experts in psychic research. In this book, Ed and Lorraine Warren speak candidly and forthrightly and reveal the incredible secret of what breaks the peace in haunted houses. They identify the category of spirits that inflicts possession on human beings, and they name the poltergeist for what it is. The mystical principles disclosed by the Warrens in the course of their explanations have been meticulously researched for verification, and according to authoritative theological and academic texts on demonology and exorcism, their statements are correct. When considered in totality, what the Warrens say cannot help but challenge our whole notion of life, death, and man's place on this planet. Nevertheless, the reader should be reminded that only infrequently do outside forces directly or forcefully interfere in people's lives. Man is capable of creating his own triumphs and monstrosities, and it is irresponsible to assign blame to unnatural forces when the real fault all too often lies within ourselves. Therefore, it should not be presumed that the dynamics and disturbances detailed in these pages happens on every street corner. The Warrens' explanations and analyses pertain only to those cases where the phenomenon has indeed manifested and where the agent is identified as being truly preternatural in origin. Because of the potential dangers in creating an exact replication of a specific case or circumstance, conversations in some chapters are necessarily reconstructions of dialogue as Ed and Lorraine recall the events, supported by first-person testimony by witnesses and/or tape recordings the Warrens made on the scene while phenomena were in progress. Names, addresses, locations, and similar identifying details have been altered where necessary to protect the identity of the individuals who were either witness or victim to the phenomena. To those persons and families whose names or experiences are mentioned in this book, I extend my sincere gratitude, and it is hoped that their efforts and uncommon travail will be redressed in some small way by its exposition here. Finally, the text of this book was read for accuracy by 2 Roman Catholic exorcists, to whom I now formally express my appreciation in writing for their knowledgeable guidance, and to my wife and parents, I thank them completely. Their unwavering support has made all the difference in the world. Gerald Brittle, author of The Demonologist. Foreword to The Demonologist by Reverend John C. Hughes, M.S. To meet pleasant people in the midst of trouble and confusion is always a special experience. To meet pleasant people deeply concerned for the hurts and wounds of others, whether psychic or spiritual, is to be in touch with rare gifts. In our times of turmoil, distress, and instability, it is inspiring to meet people who communicate a spirit of peace and respect for their neighbor, irrespective of race, creed, ethnic background, or religious persuasion. Such are the pleasant couple, Ed and Lorraine Warren, who speak to us through the pages of this book. I met Ed and Lorraine when I visited their parish church in Connecticut. As the story of their lives unfolded, 2 main impressions came out very clearly. First, this was a compassionate, loving, devout, realistic couple with special gifts of mind, spirit, and soul. Second, they were committed to fight for the protection and or release of people who have come under the sway of evil forces and negative influences. Their yearning for the release of such hostages of evil is a holy and worthy aspiration and a serious career that draws upon some 35 years of study, investigation, and careful recordings with scientific precision and analysis. The Warrens' personal gifts of psychic and spiritual discernment and devout prayer lead them to frequent consultation with clergy for the ministry of the church and its power of good over the forces of evil. As a Catholic priest, I am especially touched by the sincerity, humility, and prudence that this couple communicates and the spirit of congeniality that seems to travel with them. In the face of rebellious, evil influences, intent upon the destruction of or the obstruction of God's plan for man's temporal and eternal welfare, humility is the key to that truth which conquers the deceptive forces of evil. In both the Old Testament and the New Testament, God speaks of the deception of Satan and his demons. Thus God warns man against the lies of Satan. Truth is the core of God's words to man. To the person who believes in the God of the Bible, demonic worship is an evil, paganistic practice that chooses to oppose God. Sometimes God is simply ignored. Many times, God is mocked by patterns of ritual and incantation. Other times, God is directly blasphemed. The practices and games that are parts of demonic worship are truly dangerous, as the Warrens' story demonstrates. The danger, though, is profound and real, not a mere chance happening, because many lives have been deeply troubled and some lives taken through murder and accidents. It is extremely rash for people to dabble with powers they cannot control, much less understand. The God of the Bible is the God of truth, who described Satan as the father of lies. To open ourselves to the truths of God and his promises is to be humble. To live his truths is to be safe from the frightening evil that leads to destruction. I personally hope that all who read this report will be touched by the gracious congeniality of Ed and Lorraine Warren and open their hearts and lives to the saving spirit of our God of love. Reverend John C. Hughes, M.S.